Hey, Bill. Yeah, I'm just saying it's actually July 8th. That's all.
Welcome to the groundbreaking news program that delves into the heart of Mormonism. Your weekly window into the unique intersection of history and culture that resonates with the tapestry of Mormonism. So whether you're tuning in from the heart of Utah or joining us from around the world, your favorite news program starts now, where news meets insight, and the stories of our faith unfold.
Well, that was good enough to hear twice. Yes, this is Radio Free Mormon. And we're here at, Bill, why don't you take over?
Welcome to the Mormon Newscast. I'm going to do this to you every time you're muted now. From here on out, RFM. From now on, I'm just going to start saying your bits and your parts. I won't be just give you a little tip or anything. That's it. From now on, I'm just going to run with your lines. I'll do Terrell Given's voice, though. Shakespeare said, okay, folks, welcome to the Mormon Newscast. Yes, it is not July 1st. It is July 8th. Thank you, RFM.
I'm sorry, I didn't notice that until just then.
Yeah. It couldn't have waited.
You're a date checker.
You wouldn't want any of the listeners to get the wrong idea and think that they still have to get ready for the 4th of July or something.
No, of course not. So, folks, it is July 8th, 2024, and this is the Mormon Newscast. This is the 28th episode of the Mormon Newscast. We're grateful for each of you to be joining us in our live audience, and for those who will watch this after the show is over, watching it on a delay, I guess, essentially, post-production. I've got my esteemed co-hosts with me tonight, Rebecca Biblioteca and Radio Free Mormon. How are you guys tonight?
Excellent.
And the not-so-esteemed co-host, Radio Free Mormon.
The not-so-esteemed. How are you? You guys doing good, though?
Oh, I'm doing great. I'm never going to hear the end of this, am I?
Well, I mean, if I nip it in the bud now with a little bit of snark, then maybe you don't do that to me again. Knowing you, though, you will.
Yes, dates are my thing. Isn't that right, Rebecca?
Yeah, I remember the first time, and I was nervous, I ever, took the show as far as welcomed everybody, and I did get the date wrong, and you stopped me right in the middle of my intro, even though I was nervous, and corrected me, and I've always really appreciated that.
Well, good. I know the audience appreciates knowing what the correct date is, too.
Yeah. Well, folks, let's jump into tonight's program. The stories that we've got, Rebecca's going to lead us off with a stadium of fireworks panic. Her second story is Imagine Dragons, Dan Reynolds leaves Mormonism. RFM's going to take us into a movie that is coming out here shortly called Heretic.
Actually, it's going to be coming out November 15th.
Yeah, so we're just a few months
out there, but it's already causing quite the stir.
Yeah, and with an actor headlining it that I think we all know, sort of points to this being a high quality production, but we'll let you put your 2 cents in on that. And then I'll finish up with the final video of the night, going into 2 stories on both Mormon doctrine regarding Bruce R. McConkie and Mormon brainwashing, which was a talk by Alyssa Grenfell. So let's go to Rebecca, and I'll let you take over, my friend.
Excellent. Yeah, when I was reading through those stories at the top of the slideshow, I was like, we have some good content tonight. I was thinking it was kind of a light news week, but it's not. There's some really good stories. So, of course, we just had the 4th of July just a few days ago, and you may have heard that something happened at the Stadium of Fire. And now, for those of you that aren't local Utahns, you may not know what the Stadium of Fire is or what it has to do with Mormonism, but it is an event that happens every year. I'll read you a little bit about it. The Stadium of Fire was created by Merrill Osmond and Alan Osmond, right? Those are Donnie's older brothers in 1980. It was one of the money-making events conceived by the Osmond family in the early 1980s to recuperate money from Father George Osmond's bad business partnerships that had left the family in deep debt. Not sure why that would be part of a story, but that was in the article I copied this from.
Well, the partnerships were largely with Paul H. Dunn.
I was going to say, yes, it was Paul H. Dunn. Yeah, I'll never forget, side note, when I was in my bishop's office when I was in college, and he was on the phone. This is at BYU, and he goes, just a minute. I'm on the phone with Paul H. Dunn. We're doing a big deal in St. George. And he kind of turned his back. Later, when I found out what was going on, I always wondered how that deal went for that bishop. I don't know. Anyway, I digress. Since 1980, the Stadium of Fire has become one of the largest Independence Day celebrations in the United States, with superstar performers and awesome Stadium of Fire dancers. So it's a giant show that takes place in the Lavelle Edwards Stadium. That's BYU's football stadium, and it happens every year. And this year it was the Jonas Brothers and some other notables, but something kind of went awry. You might have heard about this. So I have a couple clips that we're going to show, if Bill can run those for us. Did you guys catch that? The fireworks that were lit off in the stadium, actually, some of them flew into the crowd, and about 6 people had to be taken by ambulance. Yeah, look at this. They're trying to get help. They're calling attention that somebody has been hurt. Now, I had a friend that attended, and she said that the next speaker got up and spoke, didn't really stop, said, it's going to be okay. Help will be here. And eventually they did stop it, I think, for about 20 minutes while help got the people out. I think our next little clip tells a little bit more about it. But yeah, all the people in the stadium just sitting there. It was a national anthem. There was a flyover. And right at that moment, some of those aerials misfired.
The fireworks that malfunctioned inside the stadium were relatively small compared to the large pyrotechnics that are used during the show's finale. The festival said it had used Stellar Fireworks, the name of the company, for its shows, and had been partnered for 40 years. It said that the fireworks were installed properly, inspected, and approved by authorities before the show started. A Stellar Fireworks spokesperson said that the firework that malfunctioned is called Whistle to Salute and had 45 shots in it. The spokesperson said that the firework blew itself apart in the middle of the firing, but why it happened is being investigated. New details about those malfunctioning fireworks that veered into the stands of the crowded Utah football stadium and struck members of the audience during a 4th of July celebration, sending up to 6 people to the hospital, according to authorities and the event organizer. The Stadium of Fire is an annual event organized by America's Freedom Festival. This year, the Jonas Brothers were the headliner, and about 45,000 people were in the stadium. The firework malfunction took place during the opening ceremonies at around 8:40 p.m. on July 4th at sunset. Several people were struck by the rope fireworks, including a 17-year-old dancer on the field in her back, a man in the east stands, possibly in the face or neck, and possibly 2 children in the east stands. The show was halted for about 15 minutes and then resumed as normal.
Yeah, so that's what happened at the Stadium of Fire, and that did make national news. Had you guys heard of it? Have you ever been to the Stadium of Fire, or have you ever experienced a firework malfunction?
I have never been to that stadium, but I understand there are 3 categories of seats that you can buy tickets for. There's smoking, non-smoking, and burn beyond recognition.
Ooh, too soon, I think.
That hit in the back. Oh my goodness. I will tell you, the only fireworks malfunction that I've been a part of when I was a kid, we had in Ohio, you can buy like illegal fireworks as long as you promise that you're taking them to like West Virginia, which nobody does, right? But I had firecrackers and I lit one, and it just immediately, the wick went, and it was about 9 inches from my head. And I remember, first off, my hand hurt like hell, but also I had no hearing for about 2 minutes. And I was like, shoot, oh my goodness, I may not ever be able to hear again. But my hearing came back after a couple of minutes. And fireworks are obviously dangerous. We all know that. But to watch those shoot into the stands, that was crazy.
Yeah, it's true. And aerials, I mean, now when I was a kid, there were no aerials, right? You couldn't get those. You couldn't light those off in your neighborhood, but now you can. I've been in 2 separate incidences of aerials going sideways. One was in a crowd at a fireworks show at a relative's house in Portland. A girl got hit in the thigh, and they carried her into my sister's house. And I kept saying, we got to get you to the ambulance because her leg had swelled up this big. And they kept saying, no, we just need to find her home teacher and give her a blessing. So they were running around the neighborhood looking for this home teacher. And I was like, are you guys, I mean, I was TBM at the time, but I was like, are you freaking kidding me? Take her to the ER. This hematoma is this big. I was like bringing out pans of water, but they wouldn't budge her till they found that home teacher to come in and give her a blessing. So that was traumatizing. The second time I was with friends and neighbors next door were lighting it off. It zoomed through our party in the front yard, hit the front door, everything exploded. People were running, careening. We were grabbing little kids. We all ran inside. One of my sons got cinder in his eye. He was screaming, my eye, my eye. We were all safely in the house. And then we looked out and we had left our parents outside. Our parents, in their 70s and 80s. And that's when we all realized it really is survival of the fittest. What we thought of at that moment in our panic, get the babies inside. So I don't know. We learned a valuable lesson that day. But yeah, aerials are scary. If we can go to my next slide, final one. I think this is great. I think this was posted by Kyle Ashworth. This is the 4th of July in heaven. And it says, welcome home. And of course, it's a bunch of fingers because like Bill described, yeah, there's a lot of mishaps on the 4th of July. It's kind of scary. So anyway, I hope that all of you had a safe 4th of July and didn't have any experiences like that. So the Stadium of Fire was interesting. So let's go to the next story. There's my name again. This also made national headlines in an article that came out on the 7th. Imagine Dragons' Dan Reynolds explains why he left Mormonism. He says, I love myself enough to follow my truth, which I think is a beautiful statement. And I know a lot of us have wondered where he stood as far as being in the church, but this article in People magazine, he definitely comes out and explains where he is now. So if you're not familiar with who Dan Reynolds is, you need to know two things. You need to know Imagine Dragons, and you need to know the Love Loud Festival. These are the things that he's the most well known for. Now, Imagine Dragons is an American pop rock band formed in 2008. This is in Vegas and also Provo. There's a connection to both, to BYU. It currently consists of lead singer Dan Reynolds, that's who we're talking about today, guitarist Wayne Sermon, and bassist Ben McKee. In 2008, lead singer Dan Reynolds met drummer Andrew Tolman at Brigham Young University when they were both students, and they formed this band. They played locally. They won Battle of the Bands competitions here. They practiced. I lived in Provo at the time, newly married. They practiced in my neighbor's basement, which was kind of fun. I never really knew who they were or what they were doing, but they were around in the Provo scene. The band first gained exposure with the release of their single, It's Time, followed by their debut album, Night Vision, which resulted in the chart-topping singles like Radioactive. I'm sure most of you are familiar with Radioactive, Demons, and also Natural and Thunder, which have come out more recently. So the other thing you need to know about Dan Reynolds is that he formed an organization called Love Loud. And this is something that's also local here to Provo. They put on giant shows to support the LGBTQ community. And he kind of went through, there's a couple articles that I'm gleaning from here, and that's a People magazine article. This one was from the Herald, and kind of explaining why he saw the need to create an important organization like Love Loud. And he said, this article says, when Dan Reynolds and his wife, Antje Volkman, got married, her two best friends chose not to attend their wedding festivities. Those two best friends are lesbian, and they weren't legally allowed to marry at the time. According to Reynolds, they weren't happy that Volkman was marrying somebody whose background was Mormon, a church known for its vocal and political opposition to gay marriage. So that right there has got to make you take pause when your, friends and family can't attend based on who they love. In one of many anecdotes Reynolds shares when discussing his history with the LGBT community and its fraught intersection with Mormonism, there's our phrase, right, from the title, intersection with Mormonism. He mentions his Latter-day Saint friends from childhood who hid their own homosexuality, and meeting Neon Trees frontman Tyler Glenn when they were serving in the same LDS mission, and watching Glenn struggle with faith, sexuality, and community as their bands both became famous. What I found is that the more you explore the lives of the LGBTQ youth, the more your heart opens up and the more you realize they are in desperate need of our love and acceptance and what it means to truly love and accept them. So this has really become his banner. This is what he champions. And this is why he has created the Love Loud organization. Now, it's interesting. something else that he said here about, this is an NPR interview that he gave, also talking about why love loud, why create this, because it's taken on huge momentum. I think the first time it was in 2017, everybody kind of went, what is this? Is this even going to fly in Utah County? Are they going to allow this in Utah County? But they did, and it's really taken off. And he says, I think the first knee-jerk reaction that I hear from most people that are not raised within religion or got out of religion, they say, well, if it's such a dangerous place, just leave religion, leave Mormonism, or just tell the kids to leave Mormonism. But it's not that simple, because you're actually putting kids in a more dangerous situation. A lot of times, if you just tell them, hey, leave Mormonism, that could be leaving their home, could be getting kicked out of their home, and putting them in an even higher chance of suicide, depression, anxiety. And it's not that simple. The question is, how do we provide a safe place for them within the walls of religion, so they can get to the point where they can make a decision that's safe for them to either stay within their religion upbringing or to leave? And so that's what the Love Loud Festival is about, bridging that gap between the religious communities, specifically Mormonism, and the LGBTQ community. But also we wanted to do it right in Utah, right next to the church, right next to BYU, which is where I got kicked out of college, so that the church has to see it. And we're going to talk about that in 1 second. So he definitely wanted to be very loud, very vocal, right there in the heart of Mormonism, creating this giant, and I have never had the chance to go. I don't know why I haven't, but it's huge. It's a huge event that happens almost every year. So the Imagine Dragons rocker was raised in what he calls a really conservative Mormon household. He attended Brigham Young University. He served a 2-year Mormon mission in Omaha, Nebraska. But in his early 20s, something changed. And now at 36, it's been several years since Reynolds was a practicing Mormon. And like I said, there's a question. Nobody really knew. A lot of things that he said and his actions made people think that he had stepped away, but he was never really vocal about it. In fact, anecdotally, some people who've gone to his concerts say that often there'll be a group of people that will yell at him, go back to church, or something like that. It's really funny. It's just strange the way fans are. I don't know. Let's see. He says, there's obviously parts of the Mormon religion that I feel pretty strongly are harmful, especially to our gay youth, said Reynolds. At times, I feel pretty isolated from my family, but I also love them, and I'm close to them, and I see them, and there's no animosity there. I'm on a different path, and I have to love myself enough to follow my truth. So it's kind of all about, what works for him. And he seems pretty open to accepting everybody as they are. He also says he has a new album that's coming out right now. They're just going to start a world tour. It's called Loom. He says he's always struggled with religion, even while growing up the 7th of 9 children to his parents, Ronald and Christine. Reynolds said he spent his 20s and early 30s really angry at religion, as he felt that he had been duped. I saw a lot of harm that came from it for me personally, but it also seemed to work incredibly well for my family. It's an interesting perspective, because I think I have the same, and I think a lot of people do too. They're all healthy, happy, he says. As I've gotten older, I'm not angry about it anymore. If something works for someone, that's really wonderful and rare, and I don't want to mess with it. So that's kind of his perspective on dealing with this family. Now, I did find this interesting story from his past that I'm not sure a lot of people know about BYU. And to me, I think this probably informs a lot of his views and attitudes that he's had going forward. So he says in an NPR interview, when I was 18, I applied to go to BYU like my 6 brothers ahead of me. I have 8 boys and 1 girl in my family. All of them went on Mormon missions. All of them went to BYU. And I was the first one in my family who was really on the brink of not getting into BYU. My grades weren't quite as good as my brothers, so I did a lot of after school. I got in by the skin of my teeth. Then 1 week before I was supposed to go, I met with my bishop. That's a mistake. And I told him I had sex with my girlfriend of 4 years. And I got kicked out of BYU before we even ended up going there. And that was a trigger point in my life. It was the first time that I kind of spiraled into depression. I was told that I had to stay home, and all of my friends went off to college, and my roommate had to find somebody else. And I felt like a whole community was judging me. That would be completely humiliating. I can't even imagine that. Everybody's celebrating you're off to BYU, and then suddenly you're not. And even if no one knows the details, they're all going to gossip and guess about the details. So yeah, I would think that would be a really difficult time for him. He says, I also felt like God saw me as this dirty kid who was sinful. And I think that was the first time that I started to think, something's not right about this. Telling a child that something that is innate, that is natural, that is beautiful is sinful. And that was really destructive to me. And it's taken me years to see that and a lot of therapy. And that's a small level of what LGBTQ Mormons go through, which is feeling guilt, shame about something that is innate, that should be celebrated, that is their sexuality, that is unchangeable. Now that I've done the research and seen the suicide rate in Utah being the number one reason of death among teenagers, and LGBT youth are 8 times more likely to take their lives if they're not accepted in their home or community, it's kind of like bubbling up for a long time with me. So this is why he feels so strongly. He's had all these experiences growing up, and he's just seeing this community and understanding what's happening and wanting to make a difference. I will say another kind of amazing thing about him there. This is in my neck of the woods. There's a really amazing venue that's been there for about 16 years. It's called the Velour, where all kinds of new bands go and perform. He performed there all the time when they were just starting. And during COVID, the owner prior to that had some extreme health issues with a kidney transplant. During COVID, of course, nobody was going. They were in danger of losing the venue. And Dan Reynolds came in, organized fundraisers, did live stream concerts, worked with community banks, and they were able to pay off the mortgage of Velour. So it's kind of cool that he did that, because it's a really important part of Provo, and it's a really important part of people that like me that were students there back in the day. So going forward, he says, my greatest goal every day is to not manipulate my kids. I really don't want to try to tell them what their spiritual path should be. I give them my thoughts and obviously try to protect them and take care of them, while also making sure they have freedom and agency to choose whatever they want. So that's kind of where he stands now. And I thought that was a really positive. I mean, he's definitely putting his money where his mouth is. He's definitely supporting community, supporting people, and, trying to make a difference. So I also then just sort of pulled up 2 more slides, just thinking about other notable musicians, that the church has been pretty proud of in the past, but have stepped away. And that would be Tyler Glenn, Neon Trees. That was about 15 years ago. And then, of course, most recently, David Archuleta. Title here says stepping back from Mormon faith after coming out as queer. So we're seeing this over and over. So anyway, I thought it was a great article, and I'm glad that Dan, I'm glad that he kind of came out and really said where he stood, because I think it's important for a lot of people to hear. Thoughts, RFM, and then Bill. Had you even heard of Dan Reynolds?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
I mean, I know his song, Believer, right?
Yes.
That's one of his songs, right?
Yeah, I think so.
Incredibly popular song. He has a fantastic, strong, masculine voice. Just absolutely talented individual. And I'm glad to hear from your report that he also has a big heart as well.
Yeah, he does.
I had a really neat opportunity to hang out with the Reynolds family. So Robert Reynolds, who is the brother of Dan, he's the manager of the Killers.
That's right.
Had listened to, at least early on, episodes of Mormon Discussion, and we grew sort of a distant but friendship. And there was an opportunity to go visit with Robert in Vegas, and Robert took me as a guest to his parents' home, which is also in Vegas. And the family made homemade pizza. It was delicious. And the cool thing about that night was that Dan Reynolds got into a conversation with his siblings and his father, maybe his parent, both parents, but at least his siblings. And it was a touch heated. And I had gone in sort of with a conversation to maybe help sort of soften him a little bit, that he was a little, agitated towards the church. And when I saw that he was sort of the only person standing on that side, and there were several siblings who were being what I thought was sort of unfair to him, representing sort of the truthfulness of the church, I ended up just sort of sitting next to Dan and helping the family sort of sense like, hey, I know you're saying this thing to your brother, but FYI, like there's some real problems here. And it was one of the coolest evenings I've ever had. And I've got a great picture with our whole family sort of hanging out with him. And it was a fun night. And I loved that I had a chance to sort of have his back that evening.
Wow, that's an amazing story.
So anyway, Anything else from you, Rebecca?
No, I think that's all I had.
You've got to really hand it to Donnie and Marie, don't you?
Yeah.
I mean, they're in for the long haul. There's still a chance. There's still
Yeah.
some time left for them to change their minds, but I don't think it's going to happen.
No, I saw a post the other day on social media where somebody said, who would cause the most waves as far as a person leaving like that? And I think everybody agreed it would be either Donnie. I mean, Marie has always kind of been, nobody knows exactly where she's at, but Donnie, I think that would be huge if that happened.
Yeah, maybe Mitt Romney.
Maybe Mitt Romney, but I mean, as far as like musical, so like Gladys Knight, that would be giant too. If she
Donnie
came
and
out in
Marie
a
would
big
be
way and
heartbreaking.
said, yeah, it's interesting. I don't know.
Yeah. RFM, take us into your story here about the movie Heretic.
Okay, I will, because there's a great movie coming out, and it's not coming out until November 15th to be exact. It's called Heretic. It's from A24. We're going to play the trailer, which is causing quite a bit of buzz down there in Mormon land, especially in Salt Lake City and surrounding areas, because it features as apparently the victims, two sister missionaries, and they're the victims. They get to be the lucky victims of Hugh Grant. So this is about a 2.5. I mean, if you got to be a victim of somebody, why not Hugh Grant? Why not someone charming and wonderful? And I think that a lot of people who are younger than I am and younger than you too, Rebecca, might not even know who the heck Hugh Grant is. So we'll go into that a little bit. I'm going to break this into pieces. It's only 2.5 minutes long, but I want to do it to make a few comments after each part so that we hopefully don't get a strike or get the live chat, killed because we played the whole trailer. I would think they would want their trailer being played in as many venues as possible, but just in an abundance of caution. So maybe if I can you, are you the only one who can hit that, Bill?
I am. Here we go.
Okay.
Hi, good afternoon, ma'am. Are you interested in learning about our Savior, Jesus Christ? Hi. Good afternoon. Hi, are you
My name is Sister Barnes, and
oh my gosh.
Can we
Are
stop
you
right there?
interested in learning more about
Yes. So this is a mission, right? And we can all figure out the fact that this is a mission because they're going around and nobody wants to listen to them. And it's not fun, right?
No.
It's not fun. And I think they're doing a great job of portraying that, how difficult it is to be in a mission where nobody wants to listen to you, but your job is to approach people with this message that almost everybody doesn't even want to be bothered with. And it's even kind of embarrassing to be approached by you on the street. So when you are in a situation like that, as I have been, and as everybody who's served a mission has been in, and then you come to a door and you knock on it, and instead of, the 500th, no thank you, and the door closes in your face, you actually get someone who says, oh, well, that's interesting. Why don't you come on inside so you can teach that message that you have? And usually it's going to be about Joseph Smith and the first vision or whatever. But that's what happens. And these sister missionaries get super lucky and they tracked into Hugh Grant. So he's the one who's opened the door. He's a little bit older now than he was back in his heyday in the 90s, maybe the late 80s, but still incredibly charming with a wonderful British accent. I think they could have gotten Nemo to play this role as well.
the Church of Jesus Christ?
Come on in.
We can't come inside unless another woman is present.
My wife is home. Does that count?
Great.
You like pie?
Yeah.
My wife has pie in the oven.
I could tell that you are a very spiritually curious person.
I think it is good to be religious, to find your faith in a doctrine you actually believe.
Well, our work here is done.
And I will go and check on the pie.
So sleep, silent angel.
And if we stop there. Okay, so dramatic moment. She's seeing that actually it's a fragrant candle, not the smell of yummy pie coming from the kitchen that his wife is allegedly making, because he doesn't have a wife. He just sort of suckered him in. And they came in just like the flies into the parlor, right? And now they're sitting there going, oh, crap. There's no pie. I always thought that was like a supernatural reference. Why don't you come on in and have some pie? Okay.
I'm still confused who's torturing who here.
That's funny. It's like, okay, you've tortured so many people. Now you're going to get yours. This could be looked at as a revenge film, right?
Yes.
So yeah, Hugh Grant's going to get back at these missionaries for all the grief they put millions of people through. Okay, so now let's go ahead and continue. And now things really start getting weird. This looks like a psychological thriller. There is not one drop of blood in this entire preview. And I'm wondering if it will be the same thing for the whole movie. I'm guessing maybe, but all we have is this trailer that hopefully we can continue now as things go from bad to worse for these sister missionaries.
You've been through this. You're crazy.
We just need to go home.
I won't keep you if you wish to leave. But I want you to choose which door to go through based on your faith.
What does this have to do with us leaving?
Everything.
I think that we're being studied.
It will make your hearts beat faster. It may even make you want to die.
Can you stop for this a second there? By the way, this is brilliant, okay? He's not a villain who's just going to be sitting there menacing, boring. No, he says it's going to make your heart beat faster or maybe even die. And then he gives this face like, oh, that'd be sad if that happened. I'm loving this. He's fascinating. This looks like an incredibly fascinating movie, regardless of the fact that it's about two sister missionaries. That's just sort of how it is they get to the house, why it is they're anxious to talk to him, and setting the stage for what's probably going to be a psychological thriller that explores issues of faith, belief, disbelief, things like that. Okay? So if you'll go ahead and finish this, hopefully we've gotten past the censors at YouTube with my commentary on the trailer.
Not be afraid. You will witness a miracle.
Can you stop right there? Okay, that's okay. Right there at the end, what you see is her climbing up the ladder and going up on the top of a house, but it's not a house. This is the little model house that he was working on, and that's on the table, and you can see the chair over there on the right. So I don't know if this is happening in her mind. I'm expecting that this is not going to be like the amazing shrinking sister missionaries. I think it's probably going to be more psychological than that, but we'll have to wait till November to find out. But that's the trailer. First off, what do you think about the trailer?
It's very provocative. I mean, I'm sitting there kind of like this. I hate that idea. In the last couple of years, I've had 2 missionaries out, and every day you just think, knock on the wrong door. I mean, honestly, knock on the wrong door just by chance, and anything can happen. I mean, I don't think it'll be Hugh Grant, but you do have those thoughts when you're putting yourself out there like that. Anything can happen.
Bill?
Yeah, my first thought is it just looks well done. It looks like a well-produced movie. It's certainly, the trailer is deeply intriguing. And so I like horror movies. I've got my oldest son, my oldest kid, he really loves horror movies. And so I can only imagine this will be one that we see together. I wonder about sister missionaries. I mean, maybe you guys could speak to this. There has to be moments on your mission that you sort of know that there is a danger, like somebody could misbehave on the other side of that door. That has to be sort of a running thought, even if it's not continually.
Yeah, well, and I've heard stories like that, because like I said, most of my friends have missionaries out, I'm of that age where our kids are going. And even the sister missionaries, when I hear stories repeated, it's almost with a humorous, they'll tell this very frightening story and then they'll say, but it was fine in the end. It was all good. And I think, okay, did you listen to the first part of the story that you told, and yet it seems like it's very easy for some parents to just dismiss, know that they're out there doing the Lord's work and it's all going to be okay. Where I have a different perspective, I listen to the other part of the story and I think there could be a very high chance that would have ended in a different way. It's not amusing, like you say. It's terrifying if you really think. And in any other context, not a mission, a parent telling that story, they would be horrified that their child was in that scenario.
Absolutely. And this is what's causing the stir in Utah, enough to get a Salt Lake Tribune story written about this. July 6th, I think it came out. So over the weekend, just a couple days ago, because today is July 8th, 2024. Isn't that right, Bill?
It is July 8th. Just a quick note, by the way. Somebody says here, this reminds me of the much older story from the 1980s about a woman. What's her name, RFM?
Isn't it
McKinney?
Kenny? Is it McKinney?
Oh,
Kenny?
yeah.
Is
We've
it
all
Jen
talked
McKinney?
to her.
But yeah, she's made phone calls to all of us trying to interfere with our lives in ways. And we've all had to sort of keep some distance from her. But yes, the McKinney lady in the 80s kidnapped a male elder and sexually assaulted him against his will.
In England.
Into the story.
Yeah. And there was the rumor that Annie Lennox, missionary man, was about that scenario, but that was not true. But that was the rumor going around when I was a teenager.
I think it was the late 70s, but I could be wrong about that. I'm pretty sure it was.
Yeah,
regardless of when it happened. Joyce McKinney.
Yeah.
Very good.
Yeah.
She tried to abduct me once.
She's got my phone number.
She has mine, thankfully. Oh my gosh. So going on with the story, though, unless you had anything else you want to say about Joyce McKinney or anything else. Okay.
Nope.
So this is Hugh Grant on the right, and this was Hugh Grant over there on the left. So he was just a dreamboat. And I never watched anything that he was in back in the 90s because he was the king of the rom-coms, right? And then sometime relatively recently, I got roped into watching one of his movies. It was Notting Hill with Julia Roberts, I think.
Yeah.
And I watched it and I thought, oh, geez, okay. But I really liked it. He's incredibly charming, and I can see exactly why it was that he was such a big heartthrob, and probably still is. And here's some of the movies he was in. 9 Months, Notting Hill, there it is. 4 Weddings and a Funeral. Do you remember that one? Bridget Jones' Diary.
Yeah.
Love Actually. Those are just a sampling of the movies he was in back in his younger days. And now he's coming back and doing some darker roles, which I think is wonderful. Okay, so here is the headline from the Tribune from July 6th. Peggy Fletcher Stack wrote the article. The headline is Upcoming Horror Movie About Entrapment of Missionaries Hits Close to Home for Latter-day Saints. Because, you know, if it was J-Dubs, they wouldn't give a crap. You know, if it's J-Dubs, if it's, you know, like Girl Scouts selling cookies, something bad happened to them, Mormons don't care. But if it's a sister missionaries, now this is going to cause some widespread angst among the Mormon population. And the second headline is, what is this dude about to do? Statistics show missions are incredibly safe, but many young proselytizers still return with stories about scary encounters. I mean, I've got my own story, and I went to relatively mild Japan in the late 70s and early 80s, where it's nowhere near as bad as it would be in other cultures, because there was a huge culture, I expect there still is, of respect. And generally, you're not going to run into people who are going to be doing things that are dangerous. So only happened once. It's a great story. I'll tell you about it sometime. I don't want to derail this too much. But yeah, so those things do happen even in Japan, and even if you're an elder and not just a sister missionary. But sister missionaries, I think they just got to be more vulnerable than guys are. A newly released trailer, still from the article, for the forthcoming horror film Heretic produced unexpected and overwhelming dread in a particular and unlikely audience. And I highlighted that because they go, why is it unlikely? It's sister missionaries who are the victims here. It seems the most likely thing in the world. Members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. But maybe they just mean that sort of in a general sense. And also this highlighted part from the slide before, statistics show missions are incredibly safe. Who writes that? That just sounds like someone who's totally in the tank for the church. You know what I mean? Not relatively safe, but incredibly safe. They do go on, Peggy does go on, and talks about some of the things that have happened on missions, though, to give a more balanced view than what you might expect just from that headline. And I understand that Reporters usually don't write their own headlines. Those are written by somebody else. So also from the article, Mormon missionaries, have been mugged, detained, jailed, punched, stalked, grabbed, groped, and sexually assaulted. They have been met at the door by guns, knives, machetes, and leering, unclothed residents. They have been chased by motorcycle gangs and police, spat upon by teens, and mocked by children. They have been caught in the crossfire of civil wars and coups, sometimes hiding while bullets flew around them. But remember, incredibly safe, okay? Missions are incredibly safe, yeah. In 2021, for example, 2 gunmen invaded a routine gathering of 70 missionaries in Mexico and then proceeded to steal wallets, cell phones, and computer tablets. They beat several of the missionaries, including the mission president and his wife. I don't remember hearing about this. In 2015, 2 sister missionaries were violently attacked and sexually assaulted in Mexico, and a similar episode occurred a year later in Bolivia. The 2016 encounter seemed eerily like the Heretic trailer. A sister missionary from Washington, and her companion met a man who claimed to be an inactive member. He invited them inside his house, a 2018 Salt Lake Tribune story reported, where he said his family was gathered. Inside, though, he led them downstairs and then held them at knife point, bolted the door, and assaulted them separately. They both eventually escaped, with the first running naked into the street to get help. But remember, these missions are incredibly safe. Since then, 2018, the church has implemented more safety measures to protect young women, creating a sister safety committee, according to officials. I'll bet it's the gold standard too. And developing a new guide that instructs mission presidents what to do when one of their charges is assaulted. So this doesn't look like it's very proactive. It's like, okay, if they get assaulted, now here's what you do. And I'll bet what they do is they try and take care of things and keep it on the down low so people don't know about it, because we don't want people to know that missionaries are getting assaulted if we can help it. Mission presidents have a protocol with a hotline number, maybe, for assisting missionaries after a traumatic event, which includes offering medical and mental health care. That's good. And involving the proselytizers, the sister missionaries, in decisions about whether they will return home. Well, it's nice that they involve them in that decision. I think that's big of them. In 2019, the church released a 12-part video series titled The Safety Zone that teaches missionaries various measures that could help protect them or even save their lives. In its videos about missionary safety, the church emphasizes following rules and being situationally aware. Many possible dangers can be avoided with common sense and by observing mission standards, including staying where you can see and hear your companion. The church's online missionary guidelines state, however, people may still harm you, even when you try to be safe. Leave immediately if you or your companion feels uncomfortable about a location, person, or situation, including a teaching situation. Listen to spiritual promptings. Okay.
That should include your mission generally too, folks.
I think so. And the other side of this is that missionaries are they trained? I think they are trained. They tend to believe that they're going to be protected by God because they are doing the Lord's work. I mean, how many times have you been on a plane and seen missionaries on the plane, and then some Mormon who happens to be on the plane says, "Oh, thank God the missionaries are here. Now I know the plane won't crash."
Yeah.
Because God won't let the plane crash if there's missionaries on it. I don't know if you knew that, Bill. Did you know that?
Yeah, it gives an extra layer of protection, almost like having 2 sets of garments on.
Yes, absolutely. Or 2 condoms. You've heard of that, Rebecca?
I have heard of that.
bagging?
And it's such a damaging idea because I feel that people are very cavalier about things. I mean, as I said, recently had 2 missionaries out and, they didn't tell me a lot of things. They told me more when they got home, but the idea was just, that's fine. That's
Your
okay.
son. This is a personal story.
Yeah. Well, no, I mean, I'm not going to, I don't share their personal mission stories, but just in general, things that would happen, it would just be like, but we were fine. But it was fine. We were protected. It was fine. And unfortunately, I knew it wasn't fine. So I was pretty terrified almost the whole time. All these stories are very triggering to me. I've always had a real just concern for missionaries. And when I see harm coming to missionaries and read about it in the paper, and the parents are like, but we know, God, I have very strong opinions about this. So,
and if things don't go well, and if they don't recover from the stabbing or whatever it might
that
happen
was meant to be too.
well, then it's okay, because it's painful. Yeah. But they were called home by God because he had another mission in store for them. And now they're preaching to the spirits in the spirit world.
Exactly. It's a win-win no matter what happens. And that's very wrong.
So continuing with this story, an irony is that statistics from the World Health Organization, WHO, and academic journals show young people in this age group, men can serve at age 18 and women at 19, are safer serving missions than not. So if you take this age group, right, and compare the ones on the missions and this is only death, actually. Okay. I really think this is only about people who die, is what they have statistics on. Then you're actually safer on a mission than you are same age group if you're not on a mission. But of course, they're not comparing it to Mormons or those who are in that group who observe the Mormon standards, right? But these will be anybody who's doing anything. Is a very risky age group in terms of it's an age group that's more likely to engage in risky behavior. Okay. Liked age, similar age, death rates for non-missionaries, for instance, are 6 to 20 times higher, depending on the measures used. So go on a mission and you'll be safer than you would if you don't, is what this suggests. Independent counts since the 1980s show Latter-day Saint missionary deaths generally hover below 10 a year. That number crept into double figures in 2013, and 5 have died so far this year.
Can I say something here, which is, I know that every year we hear about a death or two, but it doesn't seem like, if these numbers in that bottom paragraph are accurate, that the news of each of them is making its way back to the general public. I can think of year after year after year, you hear of a couple of incidents each year, but nowhere near 5 to 10. I mean, it says it hovers just below 10 a year. I don't remember hearing that many stories each year about the deaths of missionaries. And I wonder sort of why those stories don't make it more into the public awareness.
Well, there's usually a small story about it somewhere. It's usually not a big story. It's usually an accident. It was just this past week or two where 2 missionaries, 2 elders were killed. Was it North or South Dakota or someplace?
Yeah.
In a car accident. So that was 2 right there. And there's all sorts of things that happen, especially when you go into foreign countries where maybe they don't have the same kind of living situations that we have. You mentioned in a phone call with me, Rebecca, about being in, was it Russia, and having an exposed wire in the shower?
Yeah. And I think someone in the comments is saying that is one of my issues. I understand that people have accidents of all ages, but when I hear a scenario where it's a young person who's in a scenario that they should not be in, a live wire in the shower, a live wire on a roof, with rain, electrocuted, carbon monoxide poisoning in a yurt in Romania, those are the kind of stories that really get me. A car accident, I understand that can happen anywhere, but these kinds of stories where you just think, that wouldn't have happened if they were at home going to college. Those are the ones that really break my heart. And there've been a senior couple missionaries stories lately, a couple in a car accident. I don't know if those are counted along with the missionary stats or anything like that, but senior couples are also facing things like this. So I don't know. I have strong opinions.
I have a friend who's about the same age as me. She served a mission in Bolivia. So we're talking decades ago. But when you said live wire, the showers that they had there, it was a live electrical current that would heat the water for your shower. And the warning was not to get too close. If you bumped that, you would get electrocuted. And there was one elder who died from electrocution because the shower water, the electrical line that was a live wire that heated the water up, he bumped into it, and that was the end of him.
There's no place you want a live wire less than in a shower.
Honestly, that kind of thing. And I have to say that most kids have no experience with that. They didn't grow up worried about a live wire in their shower. They're not thinking about that.
The other
They're
thing
not
she
thinking
said
about
was
seeing a wire on the ground and going, oh, what's that? They're not thinking that way. They just weren't raised that way. So yeah, it's very disturbing. And I know, like you say, Bill, I think a lot of things happen and there might be a little story or maybe no story. I won't say whether it was a relative or a friend, just trying to keep it very private, but there was somebody I was aware of who was sexually assaulted on a mission in the 80s. It never made it into the news. In fact, they offered this person free tuition at any of the church schools. And it was just, it was not discussed. So it does make me wonder how many of these stories never see the light of day ever.
Just so you can see all the comments coming in about the wires in the showers. There's been 4 of them. And just FYI too, the other thing she said was, unlike this country where they put a something you can smell into the natural gas, in Bolivia, they did at the time, I don't know if they do now, but there was nothing. So if you left the stove on, you had no way to know it was left on. And so over the years, again, over the course of a decade or so, there were 2 or 3 stories of missionaries dying because they didn't know the natural gas was on.
Yeah.
In my mission, it got very cold in the winter. There wasn't a lot of indoor heating. So we had seki stoves, kerosene stoves that we would put on the floor to heat it up before we went to bed at night. And in Japan, we're not sleeping in a bed. We're sleeping on the tatami mats and a futon on the floor. Nothing ever happened. So I'm glad of that. But sometimes things go wrong when you're asleep and then you don't wake up again.
Yeah.
Well, let's go ahead and continue with this story if you have. Okay. So 5 have died so far this year. And here's a story that I thought they would reference. I thought Peggy would reference this in her story at the Tribune. I didn't see it there because I was shocked. This is the first story that I thought of when I saw that Heretic movie and saw that Peggy had written an article about it. I thought this would be referred to. And this is the story in Houston about 2 sister missionaries, aren't doing anything wrong, nothing risky. They're in their apartment at night, and a neighbor comes in at night and starts stabbing them both. And here's the story on that. This was just from a couple of years ago. I think it was 2000. It was 22 or 20, and I can't remember right now. Yeah, it was probably 22.
Lauren Willardson was sleeping peacefully when the 19-year-old woke up to a teen stabbing her. She says she felt alert and prepared, something that shocked first responders and ultimately saved her life. 4 months. That's how long Lauren Willardson had been serving a mission for the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints in the Texas Houston mission. She will never forget August 16th, the night she woke up to a 17-year-old stabbing her and her mission companion.
Started fighting him, trying to get him to leave, and honestly just struggling for our lives.
Willardson says the struggle lasted about 15 minutes.
I was stabbed, I think 3 times in my leg, once all the way through my calf, and then I was stabbed through my hand, up in my shoulder, my elbow, some other places.
9 stab wounds total. And though he tried, Willardson says he was never able to stab her head. The masked teen finally left, and she was able to call for help.
When we got to the hospital and the surgeons were evaluating us and everything, they told my parents that the knife went right in between a main vein and a main artery in my arm. And if it had turned like a single degree to the left or to the right, one of them would have been completely sliced, and I would have bled to death, before the ambulance ever even arrived.
As Willardson watched news coverage in the hospital, she says she recognized the teen as her neighbor within the apartment complex.
We talked with them a couple times. We were very friendly.
She does not know why he broke in and attacked her and her mission companion, but knows he can no longer hurt her.
Something that I've learned is that for every one bad person in the world, there are thousands and millions of really, really good people.
In her recovery, relearning to walk, sit up, and eat food again, Willardson says her faith has been strengthened.
My scars and my suffering and the things that I've been through have helped me rely on the atonement of Jesus Christ and understand what he did for me more than I ever could have otherwise.
Willardson says she was just cleared by her doctor to resubmit her mission papers. She hopes to have that new mission call in the next coming weeks and months. From Temple Square, Aaron Cox, Fox 13 News, Utah.
She loved telling that faith-promoting story, didn't she?
Yeah.
She was grinning to tell that one.
And I think this was the one where they talked about how they were not stabbed where their garments were. If I remember correctly, they were stabbed in all the other areas.
Yeah, a lot of stabbing in the legs. And there was that stab in the shoulder, regardless of whether she had her garment on there. Apparently, it was a very close thing. Sometimes there are close things, close calls, and sometimes they're not. And the people who die from these types of things don't get to live to tell the tale about how Jesus saved them.
No,
Right.
and the idea that her parents are so excited for her to resubmit her mission papers. I mean, I'm sorry. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't think she's going back to Houston.
Mm-mm.
All right. So not only that, sometimes it isn't the next door neighbor or investigator sister missionaries should be worried about. This will be its own trailer, because sometimes the person you need to worry about is your mission president. Harking back to a almost 3-minute clip, not that long at all, from episode 39 of Mormonism Live, Mission Presidents Behaving Badly. So this is a few years ago, and we'll play this clip now. Notice how young Bill Reel looks. So anyway, here's this individual, and strangely enough, they still have his picture on the church website. The scrubbers have not been doing their job as well as they should. So this is from 2013. He gets called on the mission. He's very, very successful individual. I think he's probably a lawyer. Can't swear to it, but from Alabama, I think it is. Super wealthy. His dad was, I think, very wealthy too. And so he wanted for nothing. He gets called as a mission president. He, again, very charismatic, goes out to San Juan, has his airplane, because he's a pilot, his little airplane shipped out or flown out, or maybe he flies it out. Anyway, he has his airplane transported out there to Puerto Rico with him. And this is an absolutely gorgeous mission with these wonderful islands as part of the mission. And what he ends up doing is taking the sister missionaries, some sister missionaries, apparently the ones that caught his eye, and transferring them out to the different islands. Okay. So having sister missionary companionship out on this island, this one, all the guys got to come home to Puerto Rico, sorry guys, but I have different ideas in mind for who I want out on the nice islands, and those are sister missionaries. Flies out to meet with them and gives airplane rides to certain sister missionaries and gifts. He gives them gifts of an undisclosed kind. And apparently there's polygamy going on. There's polygamy being taught. There's apparently sexual relations going on between him and the sister missionaries, or at least a lot of them. Now, once again, a lot of this is shrouded in mystery, because what ends up happening is that in May of 2014, during his second year there as mission president, apparently one of the sister missionaries or one of their companions calls home and reports this to either a stake president or probably a family member, probably a parent. But anyway, it makes it to stake president, makes it to up the chain to Salt Lake City, and they are going out there on the next flight to Puerto Rico, kind of like what they did in Sydney, Australia. They're going out there. They're going to take care of this. They land. They have this person, Philander Smart, released as the mission president. He's sent home with his wife. A story's put out that he has to leave prematurely because his wife has medical issues. Whether his wife really had medical issues, I'm not sure. She may have, but that became the story as to why it is that he couldn't be the mission president anymore.
President.
And so what? And so, yeah, I'm sorry, Bill.
President Philander. Yeah, go ahead.
Philander Smart.
Yeah, Philander
Smart. That is his first name, Philander. Philander. It was a family name. Okay. Yeah. It just happened to land squarely on this guy. So, yeah. And so the church goes out there. They land with all their feet. They get this guy out of there. Then they have this huge meeting. I think Sherry Dew was involved. If you want to get all the details, you can go back and look at the episode 39, the one we just did. And the church managed to put the squash on this story for 4 years.
Yeah.
And it was only after 4 years that somebody contacted the Tribune and said, do you know about this? And they didn't. So they ran a story about it. And basically the church issued a statement that tacitly admitted all the things that I was talking about there had happened. So that is something that's been forgotten about, I think, largely. But I think it's ironic that sister missionaries don't have to worry only about the people that they are tracting out or the neighbor kids who are 17 years old who live in the same apartment complex as them. They also have to worry sometimes, rarely, but it does happen. They have to worry about their own mission president.
Yeah, I thought it was interesting when that story came out because it said in the article, the sister missionary broke the rules and called her stake president, right? So there's no mechanism that a missionary could say, help me, my leader is doing this. She had to break the rules, find a phone, break protocol. This was before you could call and call somebody for help. There's no mechanism because I don't think they can conceive that there could be danger, like you say, in their own house right there. Just today on social media, I saw a post where somebody was talking about their wife having been a Temple Square missionary, and there was a doctor who wanted to perform exams on the sister missionaries on Temple Square. This just came out today. A husband was talking about how his wife had this memory, and other people were chiming in, and Floodlight was asking questions, but it was the mission doctor for the Temple Square sisters, because we all know certain sister missionaries are sent to Temple Square, right? To make it very appealing for people to talk to them. And they were saying that this doctor had earmarked certain people, you, my office, you need a pelvic exam, right? Of course you do. Sure you do. And so that'll be interesting to follow. That just came out today. And I guarantee there are things like that that are not reported because there's no mechanism for somebody to report when it's in your own mission like that and it's your own leader. There's nothing like that. Right. You have situations like Paris in the 50s where an entire polygamist sect started up with some of the elders. And, they had to send some apostles down to stop it. But that went on for a long time, deciding polygamy needed to come back, and sisters got involved, elders, mission president. It was huge. If you haven't looked into that, it's very interesting in the 50s, but this happened.
Is that the same mission that Mitt Romney went to?
Uh-huh.
Was this at the same time that he wasn't performing the penalties in the temple?
I think so. Yes.
Yeah. I think so.
No, it's very disturbing though. That the fox is in the hen house is what I'm trying to say, and I also know that missionaries don't ever tell parents anything. They might tell them later, but they're certainly never encouraged when they call home to tell what's happening or if there's a concern like that.
And so here's the thing that I see, and this is my own analysis. I don't know if it's correct, but I'm surprised that with all the bad things that do happen to sister missionaries and elders, but sister missionaries on their missions in real life that are reported in the news and that we have just covered, including that stabbing in Houston, which is horrific, that apparently there's a segment of the Utah LDS population that is really in a dither about this fictional movie because it's striking too close to home. So they're more concerned about a fictional movie than they are, it appears, about the real stuff that happens on the street to the real sister missionaries. And I don't know what to make of that. Why would that be? I think that they hear the stories. If they hear the stories, they forget about them. They put it in that special corner of the brain with the trash can symbol on it. It just goes into the trash can. We're not going to think about that. And then if a movie comes out and it's only a trailer with sister missionaries who, by the way, this is actually a service to the church. If they would take it as a service and say, no, you don't go into some guy's house just because he says there's a woman in there. All right. You make him show you the woman before you cross the threshold. That makes sense. I think that's a valuable lesson, and it could potentially save lives in the future. But no, they're going to get upset about the fictional, which hasn't even been demonstrated yet as to what it's going to be about. But the fictional kidnapping, abduction of two sister missionaries by the Hugh Grant character, while they're just apparently not concerned at all about the real sister missionaries who are getting knifed and assaulted and raped while on their missions. What do you make of that?
That's because there's no unhappy ending to that. Either the missionaries escape and then, thank goodness, God intervened. They're hurt, like the stabbing victim we just saw. But even that has a wonderful lesson about the atonement, and you can smile through discussing that. Or the most tragic of all, they actually pass away from what happened but then they were serving on their mission and they go straight to their reward. There's no unhappy ending in any of those scenarios in the Mormon point of view, I think. And
Bill,
so
I
this
kind of wonder.
trailer,
Oh,
you
sorry.
know,
Go ahead.
this trailer shows something different, right? This makes you
Yeah.
take a cold, hard look at it without that other ideology behind it.
I almost wonder if the thing that's disturbing in the trailer has less to do with the peril of the sister missionaries and more the challenge of their belief and disbelief, which is implicit in that those two doors they've got to choose, right? What do you think, Bill?
Yeah, as you pointed out, there's not a drop of blood in the entire trailer. And it seems like there are options for them to get out of the home, but they're going to have to deal with whether they really believe or whether they disbelieve. And who knows what the actual plot of the story is, but I'll tell you what, I'm going to be in the theater watching it. This is this sort of thing going on in missions is a hell of a lot scarier than, say, John DeLynne's baseball baptisms. So, this is serious stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Can I bring up one more scary thing that I see with missionaries? And I'm planning an episode of Mormonish on this. I don't know if you guys have seen online solicitation, not that kind of solicitation, but just especially sister missionaries. There's a picture. They're beautiful. They have a plate of cookies. Have cookies. We'll deliver. Would you like to hear a message? Or how about a stick of gum from a beautiful sister missionary? You know, we'll come to your house. Can we perform acts of service? I'm collecting all of these things on social media and the marketplace where they seem to be, proselyting using online avenues. But to me, that's incredibly dangerous, Have you guys noticed? And the elders too. The elders tend to do more kind of goofy things, skits or things with the Book of Mormon. But the sister missionaries, they really, I don't know if they're that naive or that innocent.
They are.
Where are the people in the mission that can tell them, don't do that on social media? But if I were a parent, I don't have girls, but if I did, I would be terrified at that just open, we'll come to your house. Give us your address. Would you like some cookies?
Mm-hmm.
It's so scary.
And here's our phone number, right?
Yeah, it's so scary.
Here's the way to contact us. So just contact us. We'll come out. We'll bring you cookies and a message, right?
Mm-hmm.
And anybody who sees them can call them up and invite them over. Yeah. You don't even have to track into a maniac anymore.
Exactly.
You're actually advertising for maniacs to contact you.
Yep.
All right.
And by the way, something you bring up, Rebecca, which I think is important, is there going to be a more naive group of people than Mormon missionaries? I don't know. You'd have to probably search around for anybody in that age group who's going to be as naive as that, number one, and number two, so desperate for somebody to listen to their message that they're going to go in and talk to anybody, regardless of what the spirit may be screaming in their ear.
Yeah, no, and like I said, I can speak to that from my own relatives and sons' missions, that pressure to get the numbers, and it's always a funny story later. Oh my gosh, Mom, the apartment building was so run down. It was so scary, but we went in,
Mm-hmm.
You do it because that's who you are. You're a missionary and you've got to find people and you feel like you're protected.
Are there any stories in the scripture about missionaries who don't get protected? I think the stories are about like Alma and Amulek. They get protected. Yeah. Everybody that they converted, they all get burned to death, but the missionaries get protected.
Yeah. The closest you might have is a Benedict who's preaching the gospel, but doing it in the role of sort of a prophetic voice.
Yeah, he comes to a bad end. You're right.
Yeah, he does.
All right. So I think that's the end of that story on Heretic. I'm not being paid to advertise for it, but I genuinely think that looks like a heck of a good movie, and I will be there to watch it and maybe report on it.
Hopefully there's a, what do they call that, where they send us like 10 cents a month for hooking them up in a referral fee or something, because I think we just helped a bunch of post-Mormons watch the movies. So
yes, please send me my dime.
Yeah, please.
24.
All right. The final story of the night is a short video that I put together on an article about Bruce R. McConkie in a recent TikTok with Elisa Grenfell. So here's that. This week, the Salt Lake Tribune published an article on Bruce R. McConkie and his impact for good and bad had upon the LDS Church. In the world of Mormonism, the late apostle, Bruce R. McConkie, remains a figure of both admiration and controversy. Known for his uncompromising stance on various issues, McConkie's declarations in his book Mormon Doctrine have sparked significant debate. His assertions, such as the incompatibility of organic evolution with revealed religion, the prohibition of card games, the avoidance of cola drinks, were never officially endorsed as church doctrine. Historian Matthew Harris notes that McConkie's views, especially on race, caused the church considerable discomfort, leading to the book's quiet removal from print in 2010. Despite the controversies, Joseph Spencer, a philosopher at BYU, argues that McConkie's influence is often underappreciated. Spencer contends that McConkie's rigorous approach to scriptural study has set a high standard for Latter-day Saints, emphasizing intellectual engagement with the faith's teachings. McConkie's final sermon in 1985, delivered shortly before his death, remains a poignant testament to his devout belief in Jesus Christ as the Savior. While Mormon Doctrine may no longer be in print, McConkie's impact on the church's intellectual, spiritual life endures. In other news, former Mormon Alyssa Grenfell has gained a significant following, revealing some of the unsettling songs taught to young children in the church.
These are some of the most brainwashy Mormon songs, and yes, I will be singing them for you. The first is called I Like Mormon Boys. This song is sung to the tune Baby Got Back by Sir Mix-a-Lot. I like Mormon boys and I cannot lie. You other girls can't deny. When a guy walks in with a scripture case and a big smile on his face, you get a date. A celestial mate. The next song is called Follow the Prophet, and little kids sing this in primary starting at age 3. Follow the prophet, follow the prophet, follow the prophet, don't go astray. Follow the prophet, he knows the way. The next song is I Hope They Call Me on a Mission, and this song is also sung in primary starting at age 3. I hope they call me on a mission when I have grown a foot or two. I hope by then I will be ready to teach and preach and work as missionaries do. At
31, Alyssa has shared her journey from growing up in a devout Mormon family to leaving the church as a young adult. In her latest revelations, Alyssa performs several songs from her childhood religious upbringing. Viewers of Alyssa's video express shock and disbelief, particularly at the Baby Got Back parody. Comments ranged from humorous quips to serious concerns about indoctrination practices. Alyssa, who left the church with her husband due to its discriminatory practices, continues to speak out about her experiences, shedding light on the unique and often troubling aspects of growing up Mormon. Can I just say, there's this idea that what Bruce R. McConkie puts in Mormon doctrine isn't doctrine. The three examples they get is evolution, playing cards, and Coca-Cola, cola drinks. Now, cola, it wasn't served at BYU. You couldn't get your hands on it if you tried. My friend Chris Bloxam said he made money in college by buying cases of soda pop, putting it into his fridge in his dorm room, and he would sell it to people. They would knock on the door and pay him whatever, 50 cents or $1 or whatever, and they'd get a soda. Playing cards, I heard all the time in the church that we couldn't have playing cards. And all of us knew that if we used playing cards, eventually someone was going to shame us. And evolution, maybe, but also at the same time, I mean, that was another one that was often talked about in Sunday meetings, like not official doctrine, but Joseph Fielding Smith, Joseph F. Smith, Bruce R. McConkie always got the last word in on that topic. And anybody else, B.H. Roberts, maybe John Widstow, James Talmage, and others were pro-evolution, thought evolution could be coherent with the gospel, and those guys were all told to shut up and sit down. So in some way, maybe not official doctrine, but sort of official doctrine.
You know how Joseph Fielding Smith won that debate, don't you?
No, he outlived him?
He outlived him, yeah.
Yeah.
That's how it always works, right? No, that was doctrine. If you don't think it was, you're not old enough. That was doctrine. That's what they taught you. That's what they told you. Mormon doctrine was on every coffee table, every bookcase.
Yeah.
That was doctrine. I'm telling
you. It wasn't
you.
only on the book table or the whatever, the coffee table, the bookcase. It was in every freaking sacrament meeting talk, where whatever subject you're given a talk on, it seemed like everybody, the first thing and sometimes the only thing they would do is go to their copy of Mormon Doctrine, open it up. If it's on faith, if it's on repentance, if it's on anything, just look it up and read the article that Bruce or McConkie had written for you there. Nobody, I believe, nobody has had a greater impact on Mormon doctrine than Mormon Doctrine.
And just a note too, Joseph Fielding Smith and Joseph F. Smith also had a lot to say on theology, but in much credit goes to Bruce R. McConkie, who had their works live on. Most of Joseph Fielding Smith's books that were made available in the 80s and 90s were because Bruce R. was sort of the editor of them and published the books sort of in memory of his father-in-law and kept that theology going.
Yes, the 3-volume Doctrines of Salvation, which is the collected works, well, not all the works, it's a collection of teachings by Joseph Fielding Smith, was edited by Bruce R. McConkie.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So he
I would
played a
like to
major
see
role.
everybody in the chat raise their hands if their parents still have these books, because I was recently going through my parents' books collection and it's all there. Multiple copies of all these books that we were talking about. So this was the doctrine of a certain era. It absolutely was.
Yeah.
And to a large extent, it remains the doctrine today. These things are hard going away. And what Bruce R. McConkie wrote, even though his book, Mormon Doctrine, has been taken off the bookshelves, that's long after large swaths of what he wrote in it got incorporated into, is it the topical guide? The topical, it's not the index, but it's the Bible dictionary, or what I think it's the Bible dictionary, where there are articles about so many things related to Mormonism in the Bible, outside the Bible. And I understand that those were written by Bruce R. McConkie.
Yeah, I was just going to try to put up here on the screen really quick, see if I can manage this, but see if I can make this. You probably won't be able to see it, but it's this big Elder Oaks quote right in the middle. And he said, this is Elder Dallin H. Oaks in an AP interview, Provo Daily Herald, June 5th, 1988. I don't know that it's possible. By the way, this runs counter to what Neil Anderson says and Tom Christofferson. I don't know that it's possible to distinguish between policy and doctrine in a church that believes in continuing revelation and sustains its leader as a prophet. I'm not sure I could justify the difference in doctrine and policy in the fact that before 1978, a person could not hold the priesthood, and after 1978, they could hold the priesthood. Now, that's the truth. But often you get folks like Elder Anderson and Elder Christofferson who want to muddy the waters and act like doctrine's easily definable if you just apply it to these simple rules, such as all 15 men teach it. But the reality is, as Elder Oak says, we all sort of get, they'll never say, here are the true doctrines of the church that will never change, because they don't want to be caught dead saying that, because inevitably something will change.
Yes.
All right. Anything else from you guys? What other things are you guys working on that...
can we talk about the songs? Seriously.
Yeah. What is that song? Now, that song that Alyssa was singing, that first one, that's not in any primary handbook.
That's a girls' camp.
The girls' camp. Okay.
Y'all get together and dream about the return missionary you're eventually going to meet. But no, I think I've mentioned to everybody that I have been a primary pianist since I was 11 years old. And for about the last 20 years, I kind of relegated myself to that tiny little corner of playing the primary piano, because I felt like that was kind of a safe space. You know, I was just kind of there. I didn't have to go to any of the classes or do anything else. And the more time I spent there, the more I realized, like a lot of us have come to realize, that is where it all starts, right? That is where everything begins. And I think about a lot of post-Mormons that I talk to, and they say, God, those songs are in my head. That's the last thing to go. I wish that didn't come to my mind. I wish I didn't think about it, because it's that the repetition, the mantra, it's in there. It's not just a song. It's your creed. It's your code. And in the new songs that came out in the new hymn book that we talked about a couple of weeks ago, there's 13 new songs. Some of them are primary songs. One of them is about remembering to think or sing a song in your head. It's called Think a Sacred Song. So not only are we singing these songs with our doctrine, we are singing songs about remember to sing those songs, right? Sing a hymn, which, again, maybe is just kind of gaslighting yourself again. But I'll just share one quick experience that kind of just pushed me over the edge in primary. I've talked about this before. Like I said, I was the pianist, and the chorister had a great idea. It was President Monson's birthday, I think. This tells how long ago it was. But she brought out a broom and she had a picture of President Monson on the top of the broom. And she picked a young man, like a little CTR6 or something, to hold the broom in his hand like this. And then she lined up all the other kids behind him. And she said, now you go ahead, primary pianist, and you play the song, Follow the Prophet, but you play it faster and faster. So you have to picture this. The broom's going up and down. The kids are marching. The kids are singing, follow the, I mean, it was a moment where I just had this clarity. I'm like, oh my God. If anybody else could see this right now, what would they think? I mean, the frenzied piano, the kids marching, the song, the broom with the prophet's face, it was just too much. It was one of those moments where I realized primary is not a safe place either. It's kind of where it all begins. So I don't know. You guys probably weren't in primary recently, but Alyssa is not wrong.
Bill, can you give me 5 minutes before the show's over?
Sure, go ahead.
Okay, I'll tell the story. I'm going to pretend that some people were wanting to hear the story from me.
We all want to hear your stories.
Here's the thing, okay? We don't drink tea in the Mormon church. I hate to break it to you, but they drink a lot of tea in Japan. And it's very common, part of the courtesy, very courteous people, if you manage to get in someplace, that they're going to offer you tea and you can't drink it. So the one thing you can't do is be honest with them. Okay, this is part of the training as a missionary. You can't tell them, no, our religion doesn't allow drinking tea, because that's going to put the kibosh on any future lessons with this family, right? So you don't say our religion proscribes the drinking of tea. What you say is, we're following a tokubetsu na kenko na programu, which is supposed to be a special health program. So we're following a special health program where we don't drink tea. So we get the idea across. We don't have to drink the tea, but we don't tell them it's associated with our religion until you get to lesson number 6, if you actually get that far. When you tell them about all the commandments they've got to observe if they get baptized on the following, Saturday or whenever it's scheduled for. So giving you that background, I've got a new companion. He's a greenie. His name's Elder Winkler. I remember him. I hope he remembers me. But he was totally green, fresh out of the MTC. I've been out for about a year. We're tracting in an apartment complex, the Donchis, and get to a door, knock on it. Nice gentleman was there, and maybe a little bit older than us, maybe 30 or 35. And he lives there by himself. He invites us in. We sit down, and what he does is he says, hey, would you like to have some tea? Now, I think this gentleman had been maybe having some sake before we started knocking on his door. I think he was a little bit inebriated. He ended up being a little bit ruder than, would be normally acceptable in Japanese culture. And it manifested itself in this way, which is, I said, oh, no, we're following a Tokubetsu na Kenko programu. So we don't drink tea. And he's going, well, you're being very rude. You need to drink this tea. And I'm saying, well, we can't drink the tea because we're following the special health program. So he points at the samurai sword he has up on the wall, right? Very common in Japanese households. And he says, well, if you don't drink the tea, I'm going to pull that sword down and I'm going to cut you guys into small pieces. And I said, well, I don't care if you do cut us into small pieces. We're still not going to drink your tea. And at this point, I look over, I get a glimpse of my junior companion who doesn't know a lot of Japanese, but appears to be tracking what's going on because he is white as a sheet. And at that point, this individual, I think he recognized he maybe had gone a little too far, and he backed down and said, oh, I'm sorry. No, you don't have to drink. You don't have to drink tea. We'll do something else. So that's my story. And of course, it's a fun story, right? Why? Because he didn't pull the samurai sword down and start whacking. Otherwise, it wouldn't be such a funny story.
Sayonara.
It happens. In Texas, there were 2 missionaries that were dismembered and killed. And remember that story from decades ago? Yeah, it does happen. That's scary.
Yucky. Well, I appreciate both of you. Anything you guys have got going on in your world, Mormonish and Radio Free Mormon?
Radio Free Mormon, I've got to do a special episode here in the next few days. It may not be able to go up until Thursday because of other commitments that I have with things like Mormonism Live. However, we'll be going over the details on what I had announced on my Facebook page earlier today, which is that Jen Camp did file for bankruptcy. And we'll go over the documents and what that means for the civil case, the defamation case in Utah.
Anything you want to say about this thing?
Yeah, that's really, I'm not sure I like that picture of me.
Okay. We'll swap it out.
Definitely looks like something the full moon is having an effect on your
I
hearing.
like everything else. Everything else I like, except for me.
Okay.
But I love it.
We'll swap out
Mormonism
the
After
picture.
Dark.
Yeah. Anything you want to say about it?
Yeah. Bill and
Besides
I've
you
been
don't like the
talking a
picture
lot.
of
Bill,
it.
you go ahead. You tell the folks about this if they haven't heard yet.
So RFM and I have been behind the scenes just talking about, what other ways could we have an impact on this community. And we were tossing around the idea of doing a late evening, sort of into the night show that wouldn't last super long, maybe an hour long, live audience, live show. And it wouldn't be prepared for it all. We would come onto the show without an outline, without a slideshow, and the two of us would just riff. And we sort of started Mormonism Live, sort of this kind of concept, because you and I have phone calls talking about church issues and doctrines and the conversations. You'll say something and it sparks a thought with me, and I'll say something and it sparks a thought with you. And we'll just kind of meander down all of these historical paths of Mormonism in a fun behind the scenes conversation. We thought we would give the audience, the folks in post-Mormonism, a chance to hear those conversations in action. And Mormonism turned into a much more prepared show, but we are looking to possibly get back to that original concept, doing a show, Mormonism After Dark, with Radio Free Mormon and Bill Reel.
And have it being very, very involved with the audience, having the audience involvement, where they get to call in, not just at the end like at Mormonism Live, but they get to call in, make comments, ask questions, respond, and maybe have chats that go up on the screen, and then we can respond to that as well. So this is going to be much more audience participatory and audience driven, I think.
Yeah. So there's that.
That's amazing. I'm there. What night?
We haven't figured that out yet.
Yeah, we haven't decided yet. So Brad wouldn't even say what we've talked about. We'll sort of hold off here until we have something finalized.
I was just going to say, last night you called me up and you talked to me about some stuff. Absolutely brilliant. And,
it'll make a fun little conversation maybe for one of these.
Yeah, I'm not going to give it away, but I was just blown away. I thought that is brilliant, because sometimes you take these things that we talk about here and some other things that we talk about over here, which may be more in depth than your regular, missionaries are going to teach you. If you take the discussions and then you put them together, and then it's like something else came out of it that was brilliant.
Yeah, we'll see what happens. Maybe the first Mormonism After Dark.
Yeah.
Okay. Mormonish?
Oh, yes. We have our standard episode that comes out every Tuesday night at 6 p.m. And on this one for tomorrow night, we are joined by Dr. John Lundwall. We put ChatGPT to the test. We ask it for 50 reasons that the Book of Mormon may not be historical. And it did not disappoint. And we go through those. And then we kind of felt bad. So we also ask it for 50 reasons why it might be true. And that was even more entertaining. So
50 ways to leave your religion.
That's exactly right. That was it. So yeah, really, really interesting. And of course, Dr. John Lundwall never disappoints. So we have a really fun, entertaining conversation there, 6 p.m. Mountain Time tomorrow
I'm
night.
looking forward to that.
Awesome. Well, kudos to both of you. Appreciate you both being on the show tonight with me. Folks, we will see you next Monday night at 6 p.m. Until then, check out our Facebook group or Facebook page. And if you have any breaking news on your end, if any of our listeners out there come across a news story before we get a hold of it, please go on the Facebook page and put it on there as a comment or send us a message. And hope the best for both of you. Hope the best to our audience. And we'll see everybody next week. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Good night, everybody.